I'm really curious because I know a lot of your backstory. We've known each other for a while, and I recall you shared that at one point after your stroke, you couldn't walk, you couldn't talk, and when you started regaining your faculties, you knew that you were going to write a book, and there was a period where it would take you literally all day to write 2 paragraphs. And I'm going to say, welcome everybody. This is Kathleen Gage with Power Up for Profits and the 100 Club, where we teach bona fide experts how to gain lots of visibility through podcast interviews. And I work a lot with authors, I work with speakers, consultants, and today I'm thrilled to have my featured expert on the show. She actually has an incredible story, and I just want to give you a little backstory to this. Imagine that you finally arrived where you wanted to in life. You have a great business, your relationship is solid, things are going great, and then everything turns upside down because of a stroke. People suddenly find out that when they or their loved one has had a stroke, that life is never going to be the same. And Marcia Moran discovered this awful feeling when she had her stroke in 2014. She was paralyzed on the right side and she couldn't talk. Her husband didn't know what to do because there really wasn't anything available for him as an advocate. Well, they quickly learned what to do. And when she was released from the hospital, she was really disappointed that there weren't more resources for people who had had strokes or their family members. And that's what motivated her to write Stroke Forward, How to Become Your Own Healthcare Advocate, one step at a time. A labor of love that took 4 years to write. 4 years. Most people would give up long before that. So today we're going to talk about what did it take for her to write her book and how was it to write her book after her stroke. Welcome, Marcia.
Thank you so much, Kathleen.
I'm really curious because I know a lot of your backstory. We've known each other for a while, and I recall you shared that at one point after your stroke, you couldn't walk, you couldn't talk, and when you started regaining your faculties, you knew that you were going to write a book. And there was a period where it would take you literally all day to write 2 paragraphs. Tell us, first of all, about the stroke, how life was before your stroke, when the stroke happened, and then let's talk about what's been going on since that time.
Okay, so I was just going on with life as if nothing was wrong, and it wasn't wrong before my stroke. I was a business owner, and my business was to write business plans and help companies figure out how they were going to change with the changing market. So when I woke up on March 30th of 2014, I knew I felt weird. So I texted my friend because we were scheduled to have breakfast, and the text just really didn't look right. So I set my phone down, I turned over, and I had the most horrible, horrible headache. You would not believe what it was like unless, of course, you've had one. And despite the headache, I still went to sleep. When I woke up the next time, my right side was completely paralyzed. And so I decided to roll out of bed, literally, fell to the floor, and dragged myself inch by inch across the carpet. When I made my way to the door was stuck, so I had to reach up and grab it to sneak it open. And I was so tired by that point, I laid down. I can't tell you for how long, but eventually I did make it out the door, down the hall, and to the top of the stairs where I ran out of gas completely.
So where was your husband during all this?
He was downstairs watching TV.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So something fell, and I don't know what it was, but he came upstairs to find out why. And his first words were, "Marcia, are you okay?" And at that point, I opened my mouth to speak, and nothing came out. Nothing. So eventually he said, I'm going to dial 911. And at that point, I knew that I was going to be better because I felt like they would get there soon and they'd get me to the hospital. And I felt like relief, I guess. Because until that point, I didn't even really think about how horrible it really was. I mean, I really wasn't thinking. I was just find help. And so he found me help.
And so you were taken to the hospital, and did they immediately diagnose you with a stroke?
Well, the paramedics did in the house. They said, when did her stroke happen? And my husband goes, I have no idea. He didn't think of the word stroke until then, and I hadn't heard of the stroke. And essentially, when I got to the hospital, I was completely out of it by that point. I just collapsed when they put me in the ambulance.
Right.
And so when I woke up, I was in a hospital gown. I had a needle in my arm, and it was mid-afternoon, maybe evening. I don't know.
And how old were you at that point?
53.
So you were pretty young to be having a stroke. And out of that experience, you had kind of the calling to write a book. What motivated you to write a book on advocacy? What happened in the hospital that, yes, stroke forward, okay. And it's available on Amazon, I do know that.
Yeah.
So what happened that really was the catalyst for you writing a book about advocacy?
So the second day I was in the hospital, we were out of the ER and we went to my hospital room, and the nurse put me on the toilet and went to make the bed. And my husband and her heard a crash out there. He came to find me laying on the floor, essentially. And my husband said at that point he realized that he needed to become my advocate because nobody else would look out for me. Yeah. So that was the first thing that happened. The second thing that happened was they fed me, I call it liquefied food. So it's a thick liquid, and apparently there is some food in there. And the reason is stroke patients often don't have muscular muscles on one side that work. So I had to turn my head to the side every time I took a drink so that it would go down the right way.
So do you like what you see? If you do, go ahead and subscribe to this channel, hit the like button, and leave your comments down below. What did you most like about this video? By subscribing, you get updates of future videos that I put out. And by liking, what happens is it helps for this video and all other videos to go out over YouTube land. And so I really need you to subscribe to this channel, like the video, and leave your comments below. Now, back to the video.
Apparently 65% of stroke patients have something called dysphagia. So that means that you have a choking ability. And the hospital wasn't all that good about seeing what I got for my lunch and dinner. So I got real food one time. And I was really excited because it smelled good. And I took the first bite and I choked.
Ooh.
Now, the problem is nobody knows you're choking because you don't actually cough or anything. You can't cough. So you're there with this food stuck in your throat. And actually, I don't remember how they got it out, but if it had gone down, it would have gone down into my lungs. And you're talking pneumonia. And sometimes people have died from this. So it's
right.
Yeah,
pretty serious. Pretty serious. So those were two of probably many things that were evident that a person who has a stroke needs an advocate. And, you know, one of the things in having conversations with you before, that you said your book is really perfect for just advocacy in general, if you have somebody that has a health situation. And let's talk about the process of writing the book, because it's been 5 years, a little over 5 years since your stroke. It took you 4 years to write the book. Now, I really want to emphasize to the viewers and the listeners that you couldn't walk, you couldn't talk, and you wrote a book. And, you know, I deal with authors all the time who have every excuse for not writing that book. They'll say, I'm working on a book, and it's like, well, how much is done? Well, I haven't really started it yet. And here, against all odds, you finished your book. It's a great book. You're out talking about it, sharing it with people. Tell me about the process of writing the book.
So it took a long time to get to the point where I could actually write itself, because after 9 months of therapy, I could type 2 paragraphs a day. So I would say that it was getting better first that had to happen before I could actually even write the book. Then I had gotten to the point where I could write a little bit every day, but I realized that I wasn't actually capturing my emotions when I wrote. So there was something between me and the keyboard. Well, first of all, I couldn't always remember the words I wanted to write. It would be on the tip of my tongue, but I couldn't get it out, and I couldn't find it on thesaurus. So it would take a long time to say, okay, I know there's a word out there that means something like this. So that took a long time. And then, so I wrote it, I looked at it, and I said, this doesn't really communicate how I'm feeling. So I put it aside for 6 months, and I picked it up when the 6 months was over, and I said, okay, I'm going to try again. And I was better, but I was okay to communicate everything about the book except how I felt about my family. And I went, well, this is really interesting. So I put the book down again, and the third time I picked it up, it was better. It flowed right. I had gotten my groove back, I guess, because maybe I could type a little better. I had better understanding, really, of what my emotions really were. I think that was part of it, is like, you have emotions, but maybe you can't communicate them very well because you're not sure of what they really mean anymore. I mean, it was like I was completely a baby again when I was in the hospital. And so I had to learn to walk again. I learned how to talk again. I learned how to write again. And I think along that line, my emotions were also like a baby's. And so they also needed to grow in order for me to be able to communicate out what I really wanted to say.
So with your writing, what was the longest period of time that you actually wrote in a day? Like, did you have to stop after an hour? Did you write for 4 hours? Tell us a little bit about that process.
Well, so I wrote all day, but I only got out a paragraph or two. So it took a long time for me to write the first half. The second half, it was much faster, because by the time I got into that point, I was typing at a normal speed. So I would write for probably 2 or 3 hours, and then that would be enough for me.
So what's the main message of the book? If you were to condense it down to 1 or 2 sentences, what can people expect to find in your book?
Okay. So I think there's 2 people who are going to want to read this. There's some people that have had a stroke or a TBI or maybe an aneurysm. And what they will see is they should not give up. Because if you give up and say, it's too hard, it's taking too long, then you're putting up a door and you won't get any better.
Mm-hmm.
I think as long as you believe you can get better, you will get better day after day after day. And my belief is that you will get better until the end of time. And I think that's really important. The second person that I think is most affected by reading this book is someone who is stuck in the same situation my husband and I were, where you're in the hospital and all of a sudden you have nothing and you don't know what to do.
Right.
And so you can become an advocate yourself. And this will give you a leg up, because instead of having to go through every situation as, oh, I need to do this, oh, I need to do that, you can have at least a platform for, okay, these are the things that I need to start with. And you can learn from other things as well, but at least you have a leg up on where to start.
Right. And what about healthcare professionals? Would they benefit from reading the book?
Absolutely. So I actually have something from my physical therapist. She wrote in my book a little bit, and she is clear about what she wanted from me as a patient. I think that's really important. So people like doctors, nurses, physical therapists, occupational therapists, there are things in this book that they might find useful for them as well. Maybe it's something they haven't thought about doing, but it's really helpful because it takes other people's perspectives. So I have 3 doctors that are writing, a physical therapist, my healthcare provider, so that the person who's reading it will get a sense for, this is what it takes to take care of one person.
Right.
Because
go ahead.
It takes a village,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and it's so interesting because your message in the book is don't give up. And your message as an author is don't give up, because far too many authors or would-be authors, they do give up. They never see the project through to the end. Now,
Right.
When you finished the book, it took you 4 years to write it. And then there was the editing process. There was the layout design, which the cover is beautiful. Why don't you show us the cover again? And it's a beautiful cover, and I love the image of being on the mountaintop and victory, victory, victory. And so in that whole process of sticking with it, how did it feel when you actually held that book in your hands? Did you cry? Did you laugh? Did you celebrate?
No, I hold it with a little bit of fear. So most people think you'd be really proud, and I am really proud, but I've opened myself up. So I am bare to whatever comes at me at this point. And so I'm a little bit nervous. I'm really excited, and I am going to see what happens when the book launches.
Outstanding. Now, what would you say to other people who want to write a book, but they have all these excuses or these obstacles? What's your message to other authors?
If you really want to write a book, just sit down and start writing. So, I mean, you have to know who is going to read the book. Start there.
Okay.
Why are they going to read it? And if you can't answer those 2 questions, you're not ready. But I just knew that I had to say something, because I think my process has been very different from most patients. And I think that they need to be aware of other things. So, for example, I went to a holistic doctor. Actually, I've been to 3, in addition to the neurologist. And I think that has gained me my voice back. Because if I had continued to go to speech therapist after speech therapist, I was practically done. There's nothing more they can do with me.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I was still struggling with aphasia. And so I went to doctors until I found somebody who said, I think we can help you. And that made me anxious a little bit, but also very happy because they worked on me until I got my voice back.
Nice. Well, and one of the things I really admire about you is that you will search out the answer. You'll search out the mentor, the coach, the therapist, and you did that with your book too. I really want to give a shout out to your book coach because she's a phenomenal woman, and I would love for you to share a little bit about the process of how you found such a phenomenal book coach, and what was the benefit of having her mentor you.
Okay, so first of all, someone who has a manuscript and doesn't know what to do with them, which is me, if you go and try to publish it on your own, I think you're making a big mistake.
Mm-hmm.
So my coach, Diana Needham, has been, I want to say she's been really careful with me. And by that, I mean, she knows exactly what she has to do with you in order to get it to market. And when I was slow about turning things down, she didn't yell at me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I felt really bad because every time she slipped the date, I just knew that I was letting someone besides myself down.
Right.
So she made me stand up and go, okay, if you're going to do this, you are just going to set a date and you're going to be real about it and you're just going to make it happen. She is the one who found the cover for my book.
Mm-hmm.
And I told her about what things I liked, like this blue is really important to me. And the green, I wear it all the time. So it was a perfect cover. And this victory here, that is the way I feel about how I am now. Because I feel that overcoming the stroke as well as I did is a victory.
Absolutely.
And if I'd come back half as well as I did, I'd still say it was a victory. Every day is a victory for me. Because I'm awake, I'm breathing. This is what life is all about.
Absolutely. And one of the reasons I wanted to have you on my show is because I have so much respect for who you are as a person, having gone through the experience of the stroke and then coming back from that with such grace in the way that you did, and then writing a book. I mean, quite seriously, you have written this book against all odds. You have a very important message. I shared with you that an aunt of mine had a stroke, and I was her financial advocate, where I went and talked to the billing department on her behalf because she got this horrendously high bill and she couldn't pay it. And so one of the things I love about your book is that there are answers in there that people don't even know the question to. And when they read it, they'll find out, oh, I can do this, I can do this. And they can be a voice for the person who doesn't have a voice for whatever period of time. So in closing, Marcia, what would you like to see happen with the book, with your message, and with your life as an author and somebody who has overcome some amazing, amazing odds?
So the first thing I think I'd like is the book to be read by people who really want to get better, or by the caretaker who wants to help their person get better. I think that, like, for every person that the book makes better, if I knew about that, I would feel so good about life in general. It's like I made a difference. I made a difference to one person. And so for every person that I make a difference to, good for us. Where I want to go as an author, I guess I want to be on a TED stage at some point, telling them about what it's like to come back from a stroke.
Wow, I love that. And one of the reasons I like to ask people that question is you never know what their bucket list item is. And there is bound to be somebody who's going to watch this and listen to this that knows what the connection is for that. So I would put it out to my community. If you know of anybody you can introduce Marcia to, please reach out to her. And speaking of which, how do people reach you?
That's an excellent question. It is strokeforward.com. Strokeforward.com.
And all your contact information is on there?
Absolutely.
So I encourage people, when you get the book, not if, when you get the book, go to Amazon, leave a review. Also, reach out to Marcia. Let her know what the book has done for you, how it's helped you, whether you're the person who's gone through the stroke, you're the family member, the friend, the healthcare provider. But I encourage you, get the book, do what you can, become an advocate, and be a voice for those who don't have a voice. And Marcia, this has been delightful. I so admire what you're doing, and I am committed to helping you get your message out in whatever way possible. So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Kathleen.